Good evening. This is KD9WFA. My name is LBRY, and I welcome you to the 2 a.m. net. The purpose of this net is to promote the use of amplitude modulation and also to establish this part of this band as a place for AM activity in this area. Everyone is invited to listen. Licensed amateurs who can do so legally are encouraged to check in. We listen in the AM mode and transmit in the AM mode where possible. If you cannot transmit in AM, we encourage you to listen in AM and transmit in FM. If you are transmitting in FM, please adjust your transmit frequency a couple of kCs above or below from our receive frequency. This facilitates the use of slope detection, that is, demodulating your FM signal with our AM receivers. This is KD9WFA. Please stand by.
When checking in, please announce your call sign in standard phonetics. This is KC9UDX. My name is Matt, and I will now begin accepting check-ins. Any stations wishing to check in, please come now.
Oh, I guess I'll do it. Whiskey Bravo 9, Bravo Whiskey Papa.
All right, we got one. Welcome to the net, Dave. Recognizing WB9BWP. Do we have anybody else? Where are you going? You want to stay for the net? Do we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net? Come now, please. All right, hearing none, I suppose we'll get underway here. I suppose Frank is unfortunately not well enough to join the net yet, or maybe he has something else going on. If either way, I suppose I wish him well. Hopefully we see him back here soon. And I got an email from Dale, AB9DW, and unfortunately I keep forgetting to respond to that email, but Dale says that his shack is under construction, so he will not be here. And I'm not sure if Lorelei just went to bed. We'll see if she comes back or not. And I had something that I wanted to discuss tonight. I was anxious to do so, and I neglected to write that down, and unfortunately, because I've been of course busy at work, I have completely forgotten what that was. Otherwise, it seems like we are having an early spring. The trees are starting to bud already, which is not good. I have not forgotten 1990 when we had full leaves on the trees and we had a major snowstorm and lost a lot of trees. I am also not looking forward to the fact that we've had a lot of wet weather and not very cold weather, not enough of it anyway, to kill all of the bugs. So we will probably have a unbearable mosquito-filled summer. I hope not. And I intend to go with Lorelei to the MRAC club meeting next weekend, the weekend after this coming weekend. But I don't know if that's going to be possible due to the new holiday on Monday. Well, not a new holiday, but it's a new work holiday. I will probably be forced to work Saturday, the following Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. And with that, we'll go to the top of the list. Dave, WB9BWP, it's your turn from KC9UDX.
Well, okay. Good evening, Matt. And Lorelei is somewhere within hearing distance. Frank, I was not on the 10-meter net last Friday, and I guess Frank returned as being at control. I wasn't there. I don't know if anybody else would have reminded them of today. So hopefully that's why he's not here, and not just that his return was too quick or anything like that. As far as wanting to discuss, I do that kind of thing all the time, where I get some idea one day, I got to do this, or I got to say this, or whatever, and days, weeks go by, and it's like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to say this, okay, and then if you do make the MRAC meeting, they're going to, I'll say this, they're going to attempt to do another special event anniversary operation starting after the meeting. The only problem is, next Saturday is also the North American QSO party, which starts at noon. And last year tried to do a special event on that day. We started at 10, and from 10 to noon made all kinds of contacts. And from noon on to the rest of the day, the only contact we made was if we called guys that were in the contest. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm not necessarily involved in it this year. And Sunday, people can operate from home if they wish, using the club call. But they want you to sign up in advance, which, there's good and bad to that. So anyway, that's the story there. I'm looking at the calendar here to see what's what. Last weekend was the LBRY Roundup. Last year was the first time I tried any RIDI with my own equipment, because I happen to have an HF radio that will do the encode and decode right in the radio. So I had to use two keyboards, one on the radio and one to do logging. And I would have been happy with 10 contacts. I made 50 last year. This year I did 130. Well, that's my radio timer. This year I made 130 contacts, and I think I have to check the log. I worked Yukon. That may have been the first time I even heard them in any contest. So, anyway, there's what's been going on here. Oh, and yeah, you mentioned the bugs and things. I was outside playing with antennas quite late last year, into December even. And there were a couple of those days I had buckets out there because I was doing some slingshot work. And there would be flies that literally stumbled into the bucket and could not get out because they were like, I'm not supposed to be around this long. And so who knows what we're going to have this year. This is WB9PWB.
All right, thank you, Dave. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Well, I don't know if it's atmospheric. The sun has been very active lately, although I haven't been paying too much attention, but your signal is up considerably. I'm reading like an 8, and normally you're pretty consistent at 5 or 5.5, maybe 6 sometimes. So, I don't know if you've made an improvement or if that's just the way it is tonight. I have not listened. I made the mistake of keeping the radio on with the squelch on, so I have not listened to the band like I normally do, so I don't know if there's any unusual sounds. 130 contacts on RIDI. That's to me that's amazing. I have RIDI capability here in multiple ways, but I do not have an HF antenna anymore, so that's something I cannot do. And speaking of the special event station on Sunday, that I did look at that. That would be something interesting to do, but there again, I just don't have the capability. It's entirely possible that if I have to work that Saturday I may be able to get out of work in time to show up to at least see the special event station in operation. I know what you mean with the contest. I did not listen to that last year. I don't know why, but I have listened to other contests where there have been special event stations, and that can be kind of chaotic. It can be good and it can be bad. It can be very good and very bad. So I do understand exactly what you're talking about. And I guess the only other thing that I could bring up is the fact that I finally got around to buying a muffler for my truck so that I can hear a radio if I put the radio in the vehicle. And I've got one here that's ready to go, but I have to find time to put the muffler in. Then I have to find time to wire up some appropriate power, and then I've got to mount the radio. And then it would be really nice to find the NMO mount that I had stashed away for my wife's car, which I never got around to installing, and I could install that on there instead of having the mag mount and the cable running through the door seal. One of these days, I suppose. Anyway, we are at the bottom of a very short list here. I have been informed that Lorelei had to go to bed. So we'll see if we have any more check-ins yet for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please. All right, hearing none. I hope we haven't lost Carol. We haven't heard from Scott in a while. I know that people come and go. This is the year that I planned to go through all of my logs and kind of figure out the trends. I'd like to make a master list of who's all checked into the net. Kind of feel like Warren K9IZV. Kind of miss him doing that kind of thing. I wonder if Deb kept all of his databases. Must have had obscene amounts of data on check-ins to different nets and things. Be kind of interesting to see if that stuff still exists. And I suppose I'll ask one more time here. I know that Steve will probably come around sooner or later. I guess I don't usually pay attention to what time he shows up, probably closer to 8:30. But we'll see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please. Oh, one other thing I suppose I could bring up. Lorelei did sign up for the ARRL, so she will be a member as soon as they receive the check that I wrote to them. And she did submit her information to QRZ. They got that all straightened away. I was kind of surprised that there was no issue there because she changed her email address at the same time she got a call sign, so I thought they would be a little bit confused about that. I find it kind of funny a lot of times. You know, all these websites are so ridiculously over-secure. They want to check and double-check all your stuff. When you change your email address, they confirm that you are you and legitimately changing your email address by sending you a code to the new email address. Well, if somebody hijacked your account, the first thing they're going to do is change the email address, and then they send the code to that email address. Well, now they've got full access to your account with no question of correct identity, even though obviously they're not the right person. And I suppose QRZ is not that critical. Well, it probably is, but not that bad. Not banking or anything. And there's the additional security of knowing that the person is the FCC registered or licensed amateur, I guess. Anyway, I'll give it back to you, Dave. WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay. Well, as far as the signal, no, I did not do anything. But I know that, I can't remember just when it was. Last week, I think it was later in the week, 2 meters was extremely open. We got an email from a guy in Black River Falls who said he heard the repeater quite strong over their local repeater, which was on the same frequency. And I know I was hearing some simplex things last week too, and it still may be hanging on. I've noticed the last few years that when there's 2-meter openings there, they seem to last over a couple of days. So maybe we're in the midst of that. And QAZ had some weird, things. They added the name and password a few years ago because there were supposedly robots. Well, you can see it in some of the. There's guys with a million lookups and stuff, and that came from there were some robots that were going and churning on the website looking up people. In fact, they limit you because I was trying to find a guy and I couldn't remember his call sign that passed his house during one of our walks last year, and I looked up a bunch in that area, and until it said, "No, sorry, can't look at it. You've done too many today. We're not going to let you look up anymore." Which is interesting because logging software goes out and gets name and location and stuff when you type in a call sign. And like in a contest, guys can be running up hundreds at a time. But anyway, yes, I've always been of the opinion that people that create websites never have actually tried to use them because there's all kinds of crazy stuff out there. Anyway, enough of that, I guess. I don't know what else to bring up, I guess. Even though I'm known for, always having reset the timer, 5 times on net. When there's only 2 people, I guess it's not quite a regular big audience type net. But it's a net, it's here, and it still continues, and that's what counts. See, I talked at least 3 minutes there. And good on the muffler. One time, this goes back probably late 70s, maybe early 80s. I had a muffler that was deteriorating badly on my car. The car was quite loud. Actually, it didn't sound so bad, but I was like 2 blocks from home one night, and it pulled me over. Yeah, fix that muffler, kid. Okay. And actually did it myself. That was probably the last time I did major car work. Anyhow, this is WB9DWB. Back to you, the net.
All right, thank you, Dave. And during your transmission, your your signal strength here dropped pretty much right back down to where you normally are. So whatever it was is not anymore. And then shortly after that, a lot of background noise crept in. It's like switching power supply noise. But I don't believe I have anything that should be interfering with this radio. So it's probably somebody with LED lights somewhere. I don't know if I still can. Years ago when I was a lot more active, I could tell exactly when a retail building 2.5 miles away from here would turn on their lights at night. I could hear it. So who knows what could it be going on these days. My truck is ridiculously loud, and it's not like it doesn't have a muffler. It's got a glass pack resonator on it. The previous owner cut the existing exhaust off because it was all rotted out and just stuck that on there. And it is not up to the task. Those mufflers are not designed to be quiet. And I will probably just put the muffler right after the resonator. I don't know how effective that is. I think you need some kind of pipe in between there, so I might have to do that. But I don't know how much room I'll have then. I'll have to see. My previous drive-to-work vehicle had a very similar setup. That car came from the factory with a 4-cylinder engine and a 2.5-inch exhaust. I think because they standardized on the exhaust with the different engine choices. And that engine does not put out enough exhaust to be quiet with a 2.5-inch muffler. So from the factory, it's not as obnoxiously loud as this pickup is, but it was loud enough to annoy me. So I did a similar sort of thing. I put a glass pack resonator in front of the muffler. When I bought the vehicle, it didn't have any kind of muffler. It just had straight pipes. And it was, at that point, it was obnoxiously loud. And I'll never forget this because I finally, I put a muffler on there and it just wasn't quiet enough for me. So I put the resonator on there too, and it was not illegally loud, not obnoxiously loud, just a little bit too loud for my taste. And the first day I drove to work after putting both of those, the resonator and the muffler on there, I got pulled over by a cop who explained to me that he had a vehicle just like that and it wasn't that loud. And I did not want to argue with him, otherwise I'd like to tell him there's no way he had one just like it, because the 4-cylinder manual transmission and 2 doors in that vehicle is pretty rare. And he wouldn't have known that the 4-cylinder for just those couple of years was louder than the 6-cylinder. Anyway, the QRZ thing. Yeah, they limit your number of lookups as I don't know if this is specifically the reason, but they have a subscription service. You can subscribe, you can pay for a subscription, and then you can do more lookups. I don't know if they limit it just to drive up the subscriptions or what. But I do know that you can do that. You can become, I haven't been active on there in years, so I don't know if it's still this way. They call it an XML subscriber. When you do that, you can have infinite lookups. They restrict the number of lookups that you get if somebody hits the reload button a bunch of times too. I know this for a fact. Well, again, it could have changed now, but it used to be exactly 10. You could hit the reload button 10 times, and you would get 10 lookups, and beyond that, somebody else would have to look you up in between. And obviously, they do that to prevent, like you said, a bot just from running up the lookups. And like you said, websites are terribly, just terribly designed. It irritates me to no end that, and this is a perfect example, is banking websites. They are unbelievably cumbersome to use, and how much simpler and faster, lightning fast they were on computers, orders of magnitude slower 20 years ago, 25 years ago even. Anyway, let's see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please.
Foxtrot, Sierra, Echo, Mobile. There'll be AM shortly, approaching site. Good to hear
you gentlemen on here. Net control, this is N9FSE, Mobile.
All right, there he is, welcoming Steve, N9FSE. Excuse me, Steve, you must have one of those those newfangled radios that only tunes in 5 kilohertz increments there, because I had to tune off a little bit to hear you. I'll turn it back to you unless you're very short time. N9FSE, go ahead from KC9UDX.
Well, I've been having fun driving around Waukesha here, just getting to the site, so like I say, shortly I'll be AM. I gotta hop out, open the gate, get in the building, get the equipment out, get it hooked up, get the switch flipped. And everybody, Dave, no, it was you. You came in real good. I was driving under the power lines, and that was fine. Car makes more noise when it's decelerating and charging the batteries in the Prius here. So this is doing good here with the D700. And hopefully the next transmission I might can be AM. I'm sorry to keep this one short, but I want to get the lights turned on here. We'll be back in shortly. N9FSE finally on site.
All right, we'll come back to you in order here and fine business. It still just amazes me that you can hear anything with the amount of electronics that are in that car. It makes me wonder how bad modern electric vehicles are. I would imagine that they're worse, just because probably when Toyota originally designed those cars, they cared about RF interference, and probably nobody cares about that so much anymore. I have no idea. Anyway, let's see if we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net. Come now, please. All right, hearing none, but there's a very distinct 120 hertz hum, which I'm pretty positive is not coming from my radio. It's not terrible. So we'll go back to the top of the list. Dave, WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay, I'll talk slow. That gives Steve a chance to get in, get everything fired up, dust it off. And yes, I could even hear him, but he wasn't that far away, really, from here. It turns out some friends of ours, their daughter, who's a doctor, a surgeon actually, and she had a big fancy house built, and it's just down the road from that tower. So we were out there just checking out the place one day, and it was driving down the road, and oh yeah, look at that, that's right over here. Anyway, yes, noise. A couple of weeks ago on the Friday Night Net, one of the guys said that he started picking up a couple of local AM stations in the middle of 80 meters. He wanted to know if anybody else was hearing anything. And everybody was tuning around, nobody could hear anything. And so I think it was that weekend. One of the new guys, in fact, happened to have he had just bought a new radio, so he had a spare HF radio. He went over to the guy's house with his radio, and anyway, I'm not sure what they did to finally discover it, but the guy has a D5RV antenna, so that's got a vertical chunk of twin lead type feed line that then goes into coax. And I think it was somewhere at that junction. He said one of the wires was broken on the twin lead, but it wasn't like you could go out there and look at it and say, oh hey, there's a broken wire there. It was close enough and kind of making contact enough that he was sort of hearing things, but it was also enough to be a rectifier and manage to mix the radio frequencies and give them a couple of AM broadcast stations at 80 meters. 86 was the antenna, and the broadcast stations went away. So, just an example of all the things that can happen and that do happen and that are flying around. And cars, I read something earlier, I have 3 minutes. I read something earlier last year that said a new car can have up to 150 processors in one vehicle. Now, as we were talking about web pages and that software, now picture that. I know a lot of younger software types that I wouldn't trust working on that job. Anyway, I'll turn it back. This is WB9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. I was going to say, when you first started talking about that situation with the AM broadcast stations on 80 meters, I was going to say there's a rectifier in that antenna. Long time ago, I experimented with makeshift oxidized copper rectifiers, and I know how you can have a broken wire turn into one real easy. And something that I've always wanted to do is replicate that, just to make a video for YouTube. One of those things I always want to do and never get around to doing. And I'm positive that the car that Steve drives has 150 or more processors. I got to know how those cars work pretty intimately, and I can certainly imagine that there's more in newer cars. It's not quite like you think. Even the light bulbs have processors in them. They're very small and they don't do much. But basically what you've got is, instead of having a bank of relays or transistors turning things on and off, everything on the vehicle has one wire and a ground connection, and there's data on the entire 12-volt system, and that data is received by those processors, and so that they know when to turn on and turn off the things. Like turn signals are a really good example of this. The turn signals have no, the relay is built in. There's no relay bank anywhere, and there's just that one wire feeding it. Goes directly to a fuse to the battery, and one of the main processors will signal that processor in the turn signal and operate it. And you can imagine every component in the car, window motors, everything is that way now. It's actually not a bad thing, although it probably does make for very less, in my opinion, reliable individual components. And you can see this, I've noticed it anyway, driving around at night. I see all the time where somebody's got a burnt out headlight. It's something that is not that uncommon, but it'll be a brand new car, and it won't just be the headlight. It'll be every light in that corner of the car, because they're all in one module, and that module died. So it's worse than the old cars. When you had your headlight burn out, you still had marker lights. The new cars, when the headlight burns out, the marker lights go with it. And let's see if Steve is ready to go from the indoors. N9FSE from KC9UDX.
found out it a little, but I trust good, but you'll let me know.
You are cutting in and out significantly. I got a couple of syllables and not much else.
Alright, let's see here. Oh, now if I watch the power heater, that might be good. How's this?
Perfect. KC9UDX.
Like a real station, I gotta watch the meter. Who'd have thought it? But you're coming in great. I'm sure the distance to Dave, he'll be coming in great. I put the message out on 38 west side, but I don't think we stirred up anything that way. I didn't get around to 513, been in the quick trip. Got my spark pretzel thing, which I don't need, but I want it. And yeah, the Prius is for all the processors, I guess I'm lucky to hear anything in there. But what really changed things and would make it so I didn't hear anyone is if I would have run the blower motor. I should find a way to get a capacitor across the motor brushes there, and then the worst problem I'll have after that is the usual regeneration noises, but can't get away from that in any electric, in most electric type things, just follow the hop around and we get that noise. So missed most of what Dave had on the last round because I was transferring from the car into here, but hopefully you can give us a thumbnail and such, and I know he's been busy with a lot of AM stuff. I've been just trying to keep things going. You know, a month ago we had my brother in here, now it's just me here today, and I'm almost ready to snap a picture and tell them they're missing it, but they're enjoying something much nicer. My brother, sister-in-law, and my niece are all and her boyfriend are all out at Whistler and enjoying the skiing there. As you'll see, I still have 1 bar of power, so hopefully we're good. And let's see what else I can catch up on once we keep listening a little more. At least we're able to ride in and hear much of what's going on. This is, and back to that, we'll keep an ear in between, of course, as usual, the big stick here. I'm the biggest stick here in Waukesha County. This is MNFSC on the 2 AM net. Back to that. Over.
All right, thank you, Steve. You know, on the subject of excuse me, electrical noise in cars, I guess I'll start out at the top here. There's a lot of fear-mongering about 5G. It kind of annoys me. Now, I don't like 5G, and I think it's a problem. I think 5G is a huge surveillance threat to everybody that uses it. But I completely don't think that it's any kind of health threat, and that's the fear-mongering that goes on. Everybody's convinced that the government is controlling people's brains or frying you or whatever it is with the 5G signals. If only they knew about all of the amazingly higher-powered transmissions that have been out there for years and years before 5G came around, I think people would have health effects just thinking about it. But anyway, I saw a video the other day, one of these typical 5G fear-mongering things. A guy had a RF density meter. I can't think of the exact term for this now, but you know, he holds it in front of a microwave, a closed microwave that's operating, and of course there's going to be a little bit of leakage there, and it's, you know, most of us know that the microwave is designed so that the amount of leakage is perfectly safe. So he takes that reading on the meter, and then he goes into a Tesla, and he shows that when the Tesla is all powered up, that there's the same amount of energy. You know, he doesn't say what frequency, but he's reading the same amount of amplitude inside the interior of that vehicle that he was outside the door of the microwave. And I wish people wouldn't do that stuff. There's it's one thing if you're actually measuring frequency and power density, and then comparing it to something legitimate, not just, here's what it is outside the door of a microwave, but, he's claiming that the car is cooking you, and, of course, he gets a headache by the time he's done measuring it inside the car. Obviously, the RFI from the vehicle's equipment is giving him a headache. Well, no, I'm almost positive it's the anxiety that he inflicts on himself by thinking about it that's giving him a headache. We are at the bottom of the list. Do we have any more check-ins for the 2 a.m. net? Come now, please. Hearing none, we'll go back to the top. WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay. Well, for Steve, not to worry. I never say anything important, so he didn't really miss anything. And for the guy with the video there, what he should have done, if he really wanted to prove his point, is he should have, taken a hamburger or something when he went into Tesla and he could cook it if it was reading the same as the microwave was. When I was teaching novice classes and then technician classes, I'd go into odd things like, not necessarily just radio stuff, and I talk about microwaves and explaining how, it's a waveguide in there, you're putting your food in there, and that it's really a transmitter, and, nobody in the room knew that was the case. And then I would say at the end of all of that, I said, now, no matter what, even if you don't get your license, all of you people now know more than the average guy out there as far as what's really going on with all of this stuff in your house. And that's true. Nobody really knows that. I don't know how it came up, but I was a couple of years ago I had to do some more physical therapy for my back situation, and while there's conversations flying around, and I don't think there was anybody else in there at the time other than me, and there's like 3 or 4 therapists there. Something came up about microwaves and stuff, and I went into the, it's a transmitter, and that's what's happening to your food and all of that, and they all kind of gathered around, and it's like, you mean that if something really happened, I could take my microwave and turn it into a radio? Well, yeah, not quite that simple, but yes. Anyway, and if I remember right, there was I think it was in 73 magazine. Sometime way back, a guy took a microwave and turned it into a power amplifier. Anyhow, I'll just stop at that. This is WB9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. I got to say, if I remember the theoretical stuff behind magnetrons, that's if I remember it all correctly, that's a pretty amazing feat, being able to use a magnetron as an actual transmitter. If I remember right, those things they have a lot of hysteresis turning on and off, probably mostly turning on, if I remember right. And I guess you'd have to pick between a couple of them to get the right frequency, because they're not intentionally tuned, at least not very finely. But I suppose they're better than induction heaters, which vary in frequency all over the place all the time. And yeah, I had the exact same thought. If you wanted to prove that you're cooking yourself with the car, you probably should have cooked something outside the microwave with the door shut first, and then replicated it in the car. But it's hard to talk sense and logical things with people who are worried about getting their brains fried from 5G. It's very difficult. And it's a shame because, like I say, I think there's legitimate reasons to not like 5G. One of the things that I read back when they were first starting about 5G, and I don't know if this is how it ended up, but it was going to be much lower power because it was going to be widely distributed, especially modern cars and home appliances would all have 5G quote-unquote towers in them. And I don't know if that's how they ended up doing it or not, but it's a good idea. But I don't know how I feel about having utility transceivers and the like in my personal appliances and things. And I especially am not too fond of the idea of having so many basically cell sites on smaller scales so that they can keep track of exactly where you are all the time. Anyway, next we'll go to Steve N9FSE from KC9UDX.
Websites and whatnot, and videos from wherever, and he gets wound pretty tight. He gets really excited about 5G, especially when they were starting to roll some of the sites out. I keep saying to him, what are you going to do about it? It's like a river. You going to stop the river? Let me know how it works for you. But I'm sure there may be some effects, but yeah, unless you're sitting right in front of the antenna, or I don't know, it's the frequency is pretty sneaking high. So yeah, even if you're at the bottom, often they're on power poles or something, and even if it's in your alley and you're sitting at the bottom of the power pole or in line with the antenna, you'd have to get a ladder, crawl right up to there to probably get past the MPE in all likelihood. So I try to keep them from getting too wound, unwound over it, or tightly wound, or whatever. Oh, goodness. But what you gonna do? And I guess my other point was semi-political on that, and it's I'd like to I get on the radio, I turn the radio on, and I do it from one end of the political spectrum to the other, and there's usually some I listen to more than the others, of course, because everybody'd be like that, but sometimes I just can't take any of it, can't find any music, and so it's just listen to the scanner and teachers and whatever else is on the radio, on the two-way radios at the time, which sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, depending on if it's a ham conversation, it's getting wound up too. So what are you going to do? It's great fun. Oh, we did this tour around the site. The boss was just here a day or two ago, or was it the end of last week? It's not too long ago, and he found one mouse that made its way in. So we haven't had too many lately because it's kind of warm out and they're not looking for the heat so much, I guess. It's been really crazy for January here. It's been, pretty warm. There's not much snow on the ground. We had a little trouble with the ice this morning for some of the drivers. I thought there were nails. I figured there were nails on the road, but there were people who just couldn't navigate the ice on Bradley Road west of 91st, so that's been interesting. Well, I've been neglecting to watch the power, but I glanced over and I see it's still good, so we're good there. So it was fun this morning. Well, hopefully it'll be warm enough tomorrow morning. We don't have to worry about ice, but it's been so warm, it's been weird. It's nearly mid-January. Ice fishermen are even having a hard time in many areas area, the commercial area is 100% open. The club area I'm with, since we don't make any snow, we're 100% closed. So, see what February has for us. Maybe it'll be a change in the pattern and things will, winter will arrive for the snowmobilers and my private, the natural ski areas, which there are a lot of around. And that's my report. Good to hear, David, and all those topics, as usual from you. And when I catch listening to the Rookie Net, I don't normally check in here because I'm usually in the car and out of the car for that one. But we listen to that. We listen to MSOE and whatever else is on in the car. So at least I got that in there. I should probably make designs and purchase a couple more 220 mobiles or something and get them in the car and the truck too. But all you guys are talking about exhaust before, and the Prius is good, but the truck may need one not so long. But even before that, I probably need some front brakes, and we'll see if I got enough time, energy, and drive to make that happen. But that will send it back after burning it up. The signal's pretty good and warm out the radio here on low 1. We'll send it back up to net control if hopefully you're within earshot and at the control. So this is M9FSE. Over.
All right, thank you, Steve. Yeah, no issues with your signal that time. I know what you mean about the politics. I have some very strong political ideas. I don't know what the right word is here, but my ideas on politics are very, very different than almost everybody else. So I can get into arguments with just about anybody, but I typically don't. I don't get my blood doesn't boil, and I don't get into arguments with people about politics. There's people that I can argue with because we can argue in a civilized way, and that's about as far as that goes. But I can listen on 20 meters and hear all kinds of things that I strongly disagree with. But I never, I'm not the kind of guy that will quick tune up and tell those guys where to go. There's been plenty of times, unfortunately, 20 meters, sometimes even 40 meters, and especially 80 meters, where there's stuff I just plain don't want to hear, so I turn the dial, maybe go to a different band. Anyway, we are at the bottom of the list, and I suppose we should probably start winding down. I don't have to go to work too early tomorrow, but it's kind of a hard week for me. Anyway, we're at the bottom of the list. Do we have any last-minute check-ins for the 2 a.m. net? Come now, please. Hearing none, I don't think we need to do the 7-3 round yet, but probably the next one. So we'll go to the top of the list. Dave, WB9BWP from KC9UDX.
Okay. Well, let's see here. I'm always, I may have told this story here before, but, talking about some of the crazies and whatnot, I used to like listening to what I referred to as the late night talk show, back when Art Bell was running it. And one night, one of the basic conspiracy guys with the tinfoil hat, he calls up and he's talking about how the government's after him, and they're listening to his phone calls and all these other things, and he's got to have his windows covered up and all of that. And I responded with, I'm not saying you're wrong, but what is it you know that's so important think that would, quiet down a bunch of the people out there. And if you think what you might hear on 20 is bad, you got to go up on 80 at night, especially like on a weekend at night. Those guys are quite hard to describe. I still recall the two guys that couldn't have been more than 10 miles apart, and they're running kilowatts and reading Bible passages back and forth to each other because that was their frequency, and they didn't want anyone else to use it just because they didn't have anything important to say. Concepts are really good too when they wander into some of the territories of those guys. And Steve, listening to all the nets, I always tell people, don't talk about me on the radio because I will hear it. And every once in a while, I just surprise people on various other repeaters and things when I jump in, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you were listening over here today." I told you, I know what's going on everywhere. I don't walk around with multiple HTs in my belt like some people have been prone to do, but nonetheless. And the rookie net is pretty close to being self-sustaining now. One guy, I better stop before the transmitter times out, so stand by just a moment. One guy had to leave for a couple of months. He had some work scheduling problems, and then he was sick, and I guess his wife was sick for a while, but now he should be running it tonight. He's back, and one guy, depending on his schedule, turns out he's a commercial pilot as well as a trainer for other pilots, and so his schedule kind of bounces around. So when he's able to, he will be doing the net. And just last week, he broke in another new guy, had him do half of the net, and so hopefully there'll be, I'll say 3.5 new guys to run the net, so that's good. And I can just go to be check in here and there. I'll even back off on doing that every week. When I do that, that's what makes the net run longer. Kind of like this, so I better turn it back. This is WB9BWP.
All right, thank you, Dave. It's no problem talking. I used to, when Art Bell was on, up until must have been 2002, when I quit listening because it was no longer feasible for me to listen at that time of night. But I listened to that show almost every night for probably a decade before that. Always. I never missed it. And one thing I always remember is Art Bell was no slouch. He was pretty quick. A guy that I knew at the time, one time tried to prank call Art Bell. He had rehearsed a situation that he thought he could make it sound believable, and Art figured it out right away. And he just shut him down, and the guy trying to do the prank, he didn't know what even hit him. Oh, and I was going to say, you're talking about the guys with the belt full of HTs. You got to get these Alinco ones like I have. I have 2 of them that look exactly the same, and I have 5 bands covered. And like I was going to say, about 80 meters, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's what I really miss about my KW here, which does 160 meters. My Drake does not. If I ever got tired of listening to the guys on 80 meters, I could just go on 160, and you don't hear anything like that on 160. Not at all. And I haven't been active on HF in years, and when I was, mostly. It was during the year that the ARRL did the year-long contest. Almost every night after work I would get on the radio and get involved in that. And just like you were saying, all the time we would we would run into these guys that owned the frequency, and they would be all upset that we have this year-long contest going on, barging in on their frequency or getting too close to their frequency. And I just realized I am apparently starting to get tired, so I'm probably rambling and not commenting on everything I wanted to comment on. But next we'll go to Steve, N9FSE from KC9UDX.
W9JCC.
Oh, and there we got Frank. Frank, go ahead and take a turn from KC9UDX.
Okay, thanks, man. I just got down here. So I will mention that somebody, it must have been Steve, gave an announcement about a net on a repeater, and it didn't dawn on me until I was just happened to go over and look at my calendar that this was a net night. So I don't keep it too long. I don't know who's on here. She said, why don't you go down and see if they're still on, and I guess you guys were. So back to net, W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. Well, it's very good to hear you. Glad to have you back. And it's okay. I think we're getting ready to wind down here, so probably do the 7-3 round next. So I'll go back to Steve. Excuse me, Steve again. And 9FSE from KC9UDX.
Oh, I'm so happy that we got that my messages, even if it takes a while, they do things to advertise, I guess, is the answer there. And yeah, good old Art Bell, W6OBB. I had a recording somewhere. I don't know if I still have it, but I had a recording somewhere. Somebody probably N98W recorded Art just a regular QSO on the AM bands. He had the same pipes he did on the broadcast. Then he go talk. Often, yes, but I don't know if anybody's. They probably had regular ones too. So not fully regular, but here and there you'd have more than one. So it was good old Wayne Green from 73 magazine, and I used to read Wayne in the old computer TRZ magazine again, and all this crazy other stuff, and of course his big long rambling editorials in 73, and that was always good to read. Semi-inspiring, but yeah, didn't get up and do most of what he said, although some would have taken some of his advice, so we'd all be doing a lot better probably. And neat to see how that New Hampshire mindset of their independent type thinking out there works. So it's kind of slick. Someday I'll have to visit some ski hills out that way. No, what's going on? Oh yeah, I got the other radio and the charger here. Oh. That's one thing I was going to mention too. He's talking about on winter heat operating event. So there's that one that's going on currently till the end of the month. You should sign up for that stuff online, and there's a few stations in Wisconsin participating. Centered in Illinois, but sort of like this instead of centered in Waukesha. So they got stuff going on all. I got people in most states in the U.S. that have logged into the site at least, and they always enjoy when there's a 200-mile simplex contest. It's a simplex contest at Winter Heat, so I can look for info to get them active if you're interested in that operating event. And I guess ARRL is doing Nevada volunteers on the air, which I haven't investigated too much on, but I know that's underway this year as well. another substitute. These guys are quiet and they're just wasting their, getting cranky over you butting in. Well, it's like, the only answer when you see is the frequency and use, they get everything they deserve there. So, bunch of cranky guys, but everybody has it with their own. They don't need to get too crowded, but per rules you can't get too upset either. So there's always plenty of space on VHF and UHF, and the bands that nobody uses, or there are not too many use, like 6220 and 902 and anything above that. Plenty of room, right? Even on 160, most of the time there's plenty of room unless there's a big contest or something. Oh, and that's one other operating thing coming up, speaking of AM stuff. I guess the AM International sort of restructured. You got I guess what they call it, the big iron or something, heavy metal nut. I don't know. One of those is coming up here at February 1, I think, UTC. So that stuff's out there. Maybe I can share it to the AM Wisconsin Facebook page. So good to hear everybody out here tonight, and I'll just figure out a way to rattle the chains a little more and scare a few people more up for the new year here on this 2 AM net, which is awesome. Good that you keep it going there, man. Back to you. Yes. Beautiful New Berlin is N9FSC. Over.
All right, thank you, Steve. Well, like you said, there is tons of space out here for us. The only time somebody might run into a issue where there's nowhere to go is if all they have is 40 meters and there's a contest. Other than that, there's always other bands, there's always other places to be, other modes. And I'm sitting next to my Alinco DJ G29 with the 220 and 902. Those are two of my favorite bands, and I have not spent much time using them until very recently. I did buy my daughter an identical radio, and so we use it all the time now. It irritates me. I have I've got several other 220 handhelds, but one of them is a Bridgecom, and I can't for the life of me figure out where that went. I'm missing I'm down to two things that I cannot find. One is that Bridgecom 220 handheld, which the lithium-ion battery is probably dying off, and the other thing is a rather expensive Comet antenna analyzer. I don't know how you lose something like that, but I apparently have lost it somewhere here. Anyway, I'm going to fall asleep at the desk here if I don't wrap things up here. So let's do the 7-3 round. Start out with Dave, WB9 BWP. It's your turn on the 7-3 round from KC9UDX.
Okay, well, greetings to Frank. Yes, I heard you were back on the net last week. I did not make the net. There was a contest going on, a really contest that I was in last weekend. Actually, it didn't start till noon on Saturday, but I had to get everything in shape to do it properly. And I'm not sure if I'll make this Friday. Got some stuff going on. I may not get home in time. And about losing things and finding things, I was looking through my Amazon orders, that was a few months ago, and I saw that I had purchased a USB hub. And I was talking about getting one, and I'm like, since I got one. And I think I kind of remember that, but I wonder where it is. I couldn't find it. We had new windows put in. We ordered them, when was that? July. they were done the beginning of December is when the stuff came in. And the office was really bad as far as getting access to, there's 2 windows in that room, so I had to pretty much clean everything out in order to move my desk over, and I found the hub. It's like, hey, great, I've got it. And guess what? It's only a couple weeks, and I don't know where it is right now. Anyway, 73 to everyone that's here this evening. And yes, we got to keep this going. And, even if it's a couple people 1 week, well, we'll try for more some other time. This is WB9BWP 73 all.
All right, thank you, Dave. Yeah, as long as it's not just me by myself, we always seem to get by here. As long as there's 2 of us or more. I don't recall what it was. One time I saved up for something kind of expensive. Some small item. I don't remember what it was anymore. And I ended up buying it twice because I forgot that I bought it the first time. And I went to put it away the second time in a spot that I'd prepared for it, and there was already one there. This is it was a long time ago, but I suppose back then I was probably working long hours too, so that's what happens when you do this stuff. Anyway, say 7-3 to you, Dave, and next we'll go to Steve. It's your turn on the 7-3 round, and 9 FSE from KC9UDX. Thank you, Steve. And I've already forgot what I was just going to say. I was going to comment on something you said there. And now I don't remember. which is unfortunate, because I think it was fairly important. Oh well. I will say 7-3 to you, and if I remember, I'll bring it up. Otherwise, next we go to Frank. It's your turn on the 7-3 round. W9JCC, if you're still there, from KC9UDX.
Okay, KC9UDX, W9JCC. Yeah, good to hear you guys tonight. I'm sorry, I almost forgot it, but thanks to Steve there. I think he was the one who must have pulled out the QSD. My wife, Winnie's not too much into ham radio, so she said there was somebody on there talking about some NIP, and it just didn't dawn on me. And I saw the notice this morning on the calendar, and then I forgot about it. I'm glad I got down here in time. So, yeah, we're doing good. We had surgery in November, and a few bumps along the road, but I think we're doing pretty good and should be pretty good shape here very soon. So, good to hear everybody, and thanks for letting me in there late in that Matt. 7-3 star. Everybody have a great rest of the week. Back to net. This is W9JCC.
All right, thank you, Frank. And it's no problem being here late, as long as you're here. We're just glad to have you back, and it's very good to hear that you're doing good. That's great. And as always, we wouldn't have a net if it wasn't for you guys. So I thank you all for being here. We'll say 7-3 to you, Frank. And unfortunately, Steve, I still cannot for the life of me remember what it was I was about to say. So, I guess that's my fault. I normally write these things down, and I neglected to do that this time. I'll probably remember tomorrow morning, and then hopefully I write it down then, and then I can bring it up next month. And I will say that this concludes the 2 a.m. net. Feel free to reg chew on this frequency after my transmission. We will meet again on the 14th of February. Until then, this is KC9UDX 7-3, and good night.